It was one of those mornings when everything felt slightly heavier than it should. The air in the room was still, but inside his chest, there was a small storm that never really stopped. He woke up before the alarm, not because he was well rested, but because his mind had already started running. It happened almost every day. The noise of thoughts, plans, worries, and reminders filled him before the sun even rose. He lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how something as simple as waking up had become so exhausting. The night didn't help much anymore. He would turn from one side to the other, closing his eyes again and again, hoping for sleep. But instead of peaceful dreams, his mind played scenes from the day, fears about tomorrow, and everything in between. It felt like he had forgotten what true rest was supposed to feel like. He finally got up and walked to the small window in his room. The sky was still dark, but he could hear cars already moving outside. The city never seemed to sleep. There was always some kind of noise. Engines, horns, footsteps, voices, something. He used to enjoy the energy of the city when he was younger, but now it felt like too much. Every sound pushed against his chest like weight he couldn't control. He made himself a cup of tea and sat on the edge of his bed. He didn't even feel like checking his phone, but he knew it would buzz soon. Messages, emails, meetings, deadlines, always something waiting for him. He sipped the tea slowly, hoping the warmth would calm him even a little. But it didn't. His mind kept spinning. His daily routine had become a blur. Wake up tired, get ready, rush out the door, deal with everything that came his way. Come home drained, try to sleep, fail to sleep, repeat. It wasn't one big moment that made life feel heavy. It was the collection of small things piling on top of each other. The pressure, the expectations, the speed, the never-ending list of tasks. Even small joys that once made him smile now felt distant. He reached his office after the usual morning traffic. People moved quickly, talking to each other, typing, thinking, planning. He tried to keep up, but the noise around him and inside him made it hard. Every meeting felt like a battle to stay present. His attention drifted often, and he sometimes forgot what he had said just moments before. It wasn't that he didn't care. He cared almost too much. That was the problem. He carried everything inside him, even things that weren't his responsibility. By noon, he already felt like he had worked a full day. His shoulders ached from tension. His head felt heavy. His eyes burned from staring at screens. He tried taking small breaks, but even during breaks, his mind didn't pause. It kept repeating things he needed to do, things he might have forgotten, things he worried he would never finish. He would watch others laugh, talk casually, move easily through their day. He wished he could feel that light again, but everything inside him seemed tight, sharp, restless. Even when he tried to breathe deeply, it didn't feel like enough. At the end of the workday, he walked home slower than usual. The sky was a warm color, but he barely noticed it. The soft air brushed past him, but he didn't stop to feel it. His heart felt tired in a way he couldn't explain. He didn't tell anyone about it, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how to put it into words. Once he reached his apartment, he dropped his bag on the floor and sat down on the couch. He didn't turn on the TV. He didn't talk to anyone. He just sat there, staring at the wall. The silence should have been comforting, but instead it felt loud. It was as if the quiet gave his thoughts more room to echo. He leaned back and closed his eyes, hoping his mind would settle. Instead, it brought up memories of the day, things he said, things he forgot, moments he wished he had handled differently. He opened his eyes again and sighed. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he knew he needed something to calm him. Something that wasn't a distraction. Something quieter than the world around him. Something softer than his own thoughts. Some nights he tried watching videos to relax, but the fast scenes and bright colors only made his head feel busier. Other nights he tried scrolling on his phone, but the endless posts and updates made him feel even more overwhelmed. He needed a break from noise, not more of it. He went to bed early, hoping that maybe sleep would find him this time. He turned off the lights, pulled the blanket over himself, and listened to the faint hum of the city outside. A car passed by. Someone shut a door. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. his thoughts kept going anyway. He opened his eyes again and stared at the dark ceiling. He wondered if life was supposed to feel like this, always running, always catching up, always tired. He wondered when he had last felt truly calm. Not just relaxed for a moment, but calm deep inside, the kind of calm that stayed even when life got busy. He couldn't remember. He sat up, rubbed his face, and swung his legs off the bed. The night wasn't helping, and neither was staying in the dark. He walked to the living room and turned on a small lamp. The warm light made the space feel softer. He needed something to slow his thoughts, something gentle. He picked up his phone and opened a music app, not knowing what he was searching for. He typed random words, hoping something would catch his attention. He scrolled for a few minutes, till he saw a playlist with a picture of a calm scene in simple words. Classical music for peace. Not think much of it. He only wanted something quiet, something without words, something that wouldn't push his mind even further. He pressed play. A soft piano note filled the room. It was slow, gentle, almost like a whisper. He felt his shoulders relax just slightly. A few more notes followed, each one smooth and delicate. He wasn't paying full attention at first. The music simply filled the silence in a warm, peaceful way. He sat back on the couch, closed his eyes, and let the sound wash over him. It didn't demand anything from him. It didn't rush. It didn't push. It just existed quietly in the background. Now, somehow that quietness began softening the noise in his mind. He didn't know why it felt different from the other sounds he usually heard. Maybe because it wasn't loud. Maybe because it wasn't trying to entertain him or distract him. Maybe because it felt honest, pure, calm. He felt his breathing slow down without him even realizing it. His heartbeat, which had felt heavy all day, seemed to settle. His thoughts, which normally raced from one thing to another, began drifting more gently. He opened his eyes slowly and looked around the dimly lit room. The music felt like a soft glow filling the air. He didn't feel completely calm yet, but he felt a small shift, like the beginning of something he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't know it then, but that moment, the moment he clicked on that simple playlist, was the beginning of a quiet change. A change he didn't expect. A change he didn't even know he needed. The night that had started with restlessness began to soften. The storm inside him slowed, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something close to peace. Not full peace. Not complete calm, but the beginning of it, and sometimes the beginning is enough. The next morning began almost the same way as every other morning, but something small felt different. He woke up early again, but instead of the usual tightness in his chest, there was a faint calm from the night before, a softness left behind by the quiet music he had listened to. It wasn't strong enough to stop his stress, but it was there, like a gentle reminder that peace was possible. He sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his eyes. The city outside was already alive with noise. He knew the day ahead would be full, but his mind wasn't racing as fast as usual. The memory of the piano notes from last night played quietly in the back of his thoughts. He didn't expect music to stay with him like that. He got ready for work in the same routine, washing his face, brushing his teeth, choosing clothes, making tea, but it all felt slightly lighter. He didn't know why. Maybe because, for the first time in a long while, his mind had ended the night not with worry, but with something gentle. On the way to work, he found himself thinking about the playlist again. He had listened to it for only a short time before falling asleep, but the sound had felt warm, like a calm whisper that stayed even after the music stopped. He wondered if it was just a one-time thing, or if it could actually help him again. He reached the office and tried to focus on his tasks. But halfway through the morning, when stress began creeping back in, he felt his breathing tighten. He tried sitting up straighter, taking a deep breath, but the familiar unrest returned. His fingers tapped nervously against the desk. Without thinking too much, he put on his headphones and opened the music app again. He scrolled until he found the same playlist, the one with the soft picture and simple title. He clicked it. The gentle instruments filled his ears, not too loud, not too strong, just enough to soften the edges of his thoughts. The office noise faded a little. The pressure in his head eased, and he felt himself settle into his chair more comfortably. He didn't realize how much tension he carried until the music eased it. Each note seemed to slow the world down. Each soft rise and fall made it easier to breathe. He wasn't ignoring his work. He was simply working with less weight on his shoulders. When lunchtime arrived, he walked outside and sat alone on a bench. He kept the music playing because it made the city noise feel less overwhelming. People walked by quickly, talking, laughing, rushing, but he didn't feel pulled into their pace. The music created a small space around him where life felt slower. He closed his eyes for a moment. The instruments blended with the soft wind and distant street sounds. It felt almost like the world was moving in a calmer rhythm, just for him. He wondered why he had never tried classical music before. Maybe he thought it was old-fashioned or too serious. But now it didn't feel serious at all. It felt kind. It felt like something that didn't want anything from him. Back at his desk after lunch, he kept the volume low but steady. The day still had its usual challenges, deadlines, conversations. Tasks piling up, but the noise in his mind didn't take over like it normally did. The music gave him a small anchor to hold on to. Later in the afternoon, a moment came when his mind started drifting toward anxiety again. A small mistake in his work triggered worry, and he felt the familiar tightness return. But instead of panicking, he paused for a moment and listened. Just listened. The soft strings calmed him. The slow rhythm helped him steady his thoughts. He fixed the mistake and continued working. That small moment opened something inside him. It showed him that the music wasn't just background noise. It was helping him take control of his emotions. It was giving him space to breathe. When the UNWA workday ended, he walked home feeling tired, but not overwhelmed. The music had quietly supported him through the day. He felt grateful for it, even though he hadn't expected anything at all. At home, he placed his bag in its usual spot and sat on the couch. The room was quiet, but now the silence didn't make him uneasy. He reached for his phone again and pressed play. The same warm sound filled the room. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the melody move through him. This time he paid attention to how it made him feel. His breathing slowed almost instantly. The weight on his shoulders loosened. His thoughts, usually sharp and tangled, drifted gently instead of crashing into each other. He realized that the music was giving him something he had been missing for a long time: stillness, and not the uncomfortable kind of stillness that made him feel alone with his thoughts, but the peaceful kind that softened everything inside him. He tried focusing on the way each note moved, how slowly and beautifully the sound unfolded. It didn't rush, didn't force anything, it simply existed in a calm, steady flow. Hours passed without him noticing. He wasn't watching the clock. He wasn't checking messages. He wasn't thinking about tomorrow. It was just there, in the moment. Listening. It felt almost strange to enjoy something so simple. There was nothing exciting about it. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Yet it felt like exactly what he needed. Later in the evening, he made dinner while the music continued playing in the background. Even the simple act of cooking felt less stressful than usual. He moved slower, more gently. The music seemed to guide him into a rhythm that made everything feel easier. After dinner, he washed the dishes, cleaned the table, and sat near the window. The city lights flickered outside, but he didn't feel the usual restlessness. He felt calm, genuinely calm. He thought about how the playlist had appeared so unexpectedly the night before. He had clicked on it without any real intention, and now it was becoming something meaningful in his life. He realized that sometimes the things that help the most are the things we find by accident. The little discoveries that show up at the perfect time, even when we don't know what we need. Before going to bed, he made a small decision without even thinking much about it. He decided he would listen to the music again tomorrow and the next day. Maybe even make it a part of his mornings or evenings, not as a routine he would force himself into, but as something gentle he could return to whenever he needed it. That night, when he lay in bed with the lights off, he played the music softly beside him. The piano began again, slow and warm. His eyes closed almost naturally, without effort, for the first time in many nights. Sleep found him instead of him chasing after it. And as he drifted deeper into rest, he realized that this small discovery, this gentle world of classical music, might be the beginning of something much bigger than he expected, something that could bring peace, back into his life, one quiet note at a time. In the days that followed, something new began to take shape in his life, not suddenly, out loudly, but quietly, like a slow sunrise. He didn't make any big promises or strict schedules for himself, but each morning, before the rush of the day could catch him, he played a few minutes of the same classical music that had helped him so much. It was becoming a small ritual, one that he looked forward to without even realizing it. He would wake up to the same old pressure in his mind. But instead of letting it take over, he sat by the window, opened his music app, and let the soft sounds fill the room. The notes were simple, gentle, and steady. They didn't fix everything instantly. They made the first moments of the day feel less heavy. Little by little, he found himself breathing deeper. His shoulders relaxed sooner. His mind became less tangled. It was surprising how something so small could change the way he started the day. At work, he continued the routine. He didn't wear headphones all the time. But whenever he felt the familiar tightness in his chest, or the noise in his head growing louder, he reached for the music. Even just one soft piece was enough to guide him back to himself. He noticed something interesting as the days passed. The more he listened to classical music, the more he paid attention to the world around him, the way sunlight fell through the window, the way the air felt when he walked outside, the small sounds that he used to ignore. Somehow the music had made him slower, in a good way, more aware, more present. One morning, as he was making tea, he realized he was moving at a calmer pace. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't thinking 10 steps ahead. He wasn't carrying the usual heaviness in his chest. He stood there quietly, the warm steam rising from the cup. And he felt grateful for this simple change. It wasn't that his life had become easier. His job was still demanding, the city was still loud, and his responsibilities were still there. But the way he responded to everything was changing. Instead of letting stress control him, he was slowly learning how to manage it. One of the biggest shifts, he noticed, was how he handled difficult moments. Before, a small mistake or misunderstanding would ruin his whole day. It would eat at him, make him overthink, make him question himself. But now, whenever such moments came, he took a slow breath, played a calming piece, and allowed himself a moment to reset. The music didn't erase the problem, but it gave him the clarity to face it without fear. One afternoon, he had an especially stressful meeting. Voices were raised, opinions clashed, and the pressure in the room felt suffocating. His heart was racing, and he could feel the familiar panic rising inside him. As soon as the meeting ended, he walked outside and sat on a quiet bench. He put on his headphones and played a slow, peaceful tune. The first few seconds felt like cool water on a warm day. He leaned back and closed his eyes, letting the music unwind the tension in his chest. The stress didn't disappear, but it no longer felt like something that would break him. When he returned to his desk, he felt more grounded, more in control. The rest of the day passed smoothly, something that would not have happened a few weeks before. What surprised him most was how natural the routine became. He didn't have to remind himself to listen to music. It simply became part of his life, like brushing his teeth or drinking water. He realized that inner peace wasn't something that arrived in one big moment. It was a collection of small habits repeated daily. In the evenings, he found new comfort in playing classical music while doing simple tasks. Cooking felt easier. Cleaning felt less tiring. Even sitting alone after dinner no longer felt empty. The music filled the room with a soft warmth that made everything feel more meaningful. One night, he sat near the window with the lights off. The city outside was glowing with streetlights and passing cars. He placed his phone beside him and played a slow piece that had become one of his favorites. As the melody filled the room, he felt something shift inside him. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. Not halfway, not briefly, not accidentally, but fully. It wasn't a dramatic feeling, not a sudden burst of emotion. It was a deep, quiet calm, the kind that made his chest feel lighter and his mind feel clear. He sat there for a long time, listening, breathing, and letting the music guide him. He began to understand that peace was not something he had to chase. It was something he could create for himself. Classical music had become the tool that helped him build it. slowly and consistently. Days turned into weeks, and the habit stayed with him. He discovered new pieces, new instruments, new melodies that touched him in different ways. Some were soft and slow, others slightly brighter, but all of them carried the same gentle effect on his mind. On weekends, he started taking short walks with music playing in his ears. The combination of fresh air and peaceful tunes made everything around him feel softer. Even busy streets felt less chaotic. He noticed things he had never paid attention to before: the rustling of leaves, the quiet footsteps of strangers, the distant sound of birds. He felt connected to the world in a way he hadn't felt in years. What made this new routine even more meaningful was how natural it became. He didn't force himself to follow a strict plan. He wasn't trying to become a different person. He was simply allowing calmness into his life one moment at a time. Sometimes he felt overwhelmed. He paused for a minute instead of pushing himself. He learned to step away when needed, even if only for a short time. This was something he had never done before. In the past, he would push through everything until he felt burnt out. But now, with music as his companion, he learned the value of pacing himself. One morning, as he got ready for work, he realized he hadn't woken up with the usual heaviness. He still had responsibilities, still had deadlines, still had things to worry about, but he didn't wake with fear or pressure. He woke with a soft calm, a quiet balance. He smiled to himself, surprised by how far he had come without even noticing. He didn't need anyone else to tell him. He could feel it clearly inside him. In the evenings, when the day had been especially long, the music helped him unwind. He would turn off the lights, sit on the floor, or lie on the couch, and let the sound guide him into a peaceful space. It didn't matter how stressful the day had been, those few minutes of calm were always waiting for him. Slowly, he started sleeping better too. The nights of tossing and turning grew fewer. The soft music before bed became a ritual that prepared his mind for rest. He didn't fall asleep instantly, but the music helped him drift off naturally, without fighting his thoughts. He also noticed how the change affected his conversations with others. He listened more. He responded with more patience. He didn't get irritated as easily. People around him noticed the difference too. They didn't know what had changed, but they could see something in his calm expression. One colleague even asked him, "You seem more relaxed these days. What's your secret?" He just smiled. It wasn't a secret. It was simply a quiet discovery that had grown into a peaceful habit. He never imagined that something as simple as classical music could bring such comfort into his life. Not because he underestimated music, but because he never realized how deeply sound could affect the human heart. Now, classical music was no longer just sounds in the background. It had become part of his inner world, a gentle voice reminding him to slow down, breathe, and take care of himself. His life wasn't perfect. His days were still busy. Stress still found its way in sometimes. But he had discovered a tool that helped him navigate everything more gracefully. What mattered most was that he no longer felt lost in his thoughts. He no longer felt like the world was moving too fast for him to keep up. He had found a rhythm, his own rhythm. And that rhythm was built on small, soft moments of music that carried him toward a calmer, more balanced version of himself. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing: he would keep this habit close. He would keep listening, keep breathing, keep finding peace in the gentle notes that had already changed so much inside him. It was no longer just a routine. It had become a part of who he was becoming. The change in his life did not happen overnight, but with every passing week, the shift inside him became clearer. Classical music was no longer just a routine or a small escape. It was becoming a quiet guide, a gentle companion that shaped the way he moved through the world. He didn't plan for this transformation to happen. It simply grew inside him, note by note, moment by moment. One morning, he woke up earlier than usual. The sky outside was still pale, not fully awake. Instead of rushing to get ready, he opened the window and let the cool air fill the room. He played one of his favorite calm pieces and sat on the edge of his bed, watching the soft light slowly spread. For a long time, mornings had felt heavy, almost like a battle. But now they held something peaceful. Even on days when he knew work would be hard, the calm start made him feel ready, not scared. He didn't realize how much this small change mattered until he caught himself smiling without a reason. On his way to work, he listened to a new piece he had found the night before. It had a slow build-up, a quiet start that turned into a warm and full sound. As the city moved around him, cars honking, people rushing, shops opening, he felt separated from the noise. The music wrapped around him like a warm blanket, turning a chaotic morning into a peaceful walk. At work, the changes showed even more. He handled tasks with more focus. When things went wrong, he paused instead of panicking. He listened to people more patiently. And when stress built up, he used music like a small reset button. One afternoon, during a tough conversation with a coworker, he felt frustration rising inside him. His heartbeat quickened. His thoughts tangled. But instead of snapping or shutting down, he quietly asked for a moment, stepped outside, and stood under the shade of a small tree. He put in his earphones, picked a calming classical piece, and closed his eyes. The melody steadied him, helping him regain clarity. When he returned, his tone was calm, his thoughts clearer, and the discussion ended peacefully. These small victories mattered. They were signs that he was becoming someone stronger, someone more balanced, someone more patient with himself and others. At home, his relationship with his own space also changed. The living room no longer felt like a place where he carried his stress. It became a space for resting, breathing, reflecting. Every evening, he played classical music while he cooked or cleaned. The simple tasks turned almost soothing. He found himself appreciating ordinary things, the sound of chopping vegetables, the smell of warm food, the feeling of clean sheets, the quiet after dinner. These moments, once overlooked, now felt meaningful. Sometimes he paused in the middle of the room and listened to the music echo softly through the space. It made the house feel alive, warm, and calm all at once. On weekends, he started exploring new places while listening to peaceful melodies. A small park near his home became one of his favorite spots. He would sit on a bench, watching children play, older people walk slowly, and birds hop around the grass. With the music playing, it felt like the world slowed down just for him. He also noticed changes in his thinking. His mind, once always filled with worries, now made space for hope and imagination. Sometimes he found himself daydreaming about traveling or learning a new skill. Sometimes he simply enjoyed sitting quietly with his thoughts without feeling overwhelmed. He began to understand emotions in a deeper way. The music helped him recognize things he had ignored for years, how tired he truly was, how much pressure he had carried, how little time he had given himself to rest. Instead of pushing those feelings away, he let them rise gently and pass like soft waves. The calm melodies taught him that emotions didn't always need to be fought. Sometimes they only needed to be listened to. One evening, after a long and draining day, he came home feeling defeated. Nothing had gone right, and the weight of everything pressed hard on his chest. He sat on the floor and leaned against the couch, feeling exhausted in every way. He reached for his phone, played a slow classical piece, and closed his eyes. For a moment, tears filled his eyes, not because he was breaking, but because he was finally allowing himself to feel instead of holding everything inside. The music didn't tell him to cheer up or forget his worries. It simply stayed with him, holding his emotions gently. Slowly, the heaviness loosened. His breathing softened. The world didn't feel as sharp anymore by the time the piece ended. He felt lighter, not fixed, but steady enough to stand up again. He made himself a warm drink and sat by the window. The night outside was quiet. He whispered a small thank you to himself for not giving up, a thank you to the music that helped him through another hard day, another important part of his transformation came from self-reflection. With the help of classical music, he started noticing patterns in his life, how easily he stressed himself, how rarely he rested, how often he ignored his own needs. He began writing small notes to remind himself to breathe, to slow down, to take breaks. He placed them in visible spots, in the kitchen, near his bed, beside his computer. These gentle reminders helped him stay connected to himself. People around him continued to notice the change. His friends said he seemed more centered. His coworkers said he handled pressure gracefully. Even his family, who didn't know about his new routine, sensed something peaceful in him. He didn't boast about his secret. He didn't feel the need to explain. He simply smiled when people commented on his calmness. Deep down, he knew the truth. This quiet world of classical music had helped him rebuild his inner peace. One day, while sitting on the rooftop of his building, he watched the sunset turn the sky into shades of orange and gold. The wind was cool, the city sounds faint, and the music playing softly in his ears felt perfectly matched to the moment. He realized he had learned something important. Peace wasn't something someone else could hand to him. And it wasn't something he could find in big achievements or dramatic changes. Peace was something he built slowly inside himself, through habits, through small choices, through moments of stillness, through the simple act of listening. He understood now that calmness didn't mean the absence of problems. It meant having enough strength and clarity to face them without losing himself. Classical music had become the bridge between his stress and his peace. Each melody guided him closer to understanding himself, his emotions, his thoughts, his limits. The transformation wasn't finished. He wasn't suddenly perfect or free from stress, but he was different, more aware, more grounded, more connected to his inner world. He knew that life would still bring challenges, but he also knew that he now had a powerful, gentle tool to help him through anything. And as the sun set that evening, painting the sky in soft colors, he sat there quietly, listening to the music that had become a part of him, a reminder that even in a loud world, calmness can be found, a reminder that healing doesn't always happen loudly, a reminder that sometimes the softest sounds create the strongest changes. And he embraced that truth fully, deeply, peacefully. The days had begun to feel different now, almost softer in a way that the person couldn't fully explain. Life still carried the same responsibilities, the same routines, and the same unexpected challenges. But something inside them had shifted. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet, like the gentle hum of a peaceful morning. Classical music had slowly become part of their daily life, shaping their inner world without forcing any sudden change. It entered naturally, like sunlight slipping through the cracks of a window. Every evening, after finishing work and settling down, the person would put on their earphones or let the small speaker on their table play a familiar piece. The music created a bubble around them, a soft space where worries didn't feel as heavy. It was no longer something they listened to accidentally or occasionally. It was something they reached for with intention, like a ritual that helped them reset their mind. One night, they sat down on the floor beside the window, wrapped in a thin blanket. They played a slow piano tune that had become one of their favorites. The notes flowed gently, rising and falling like calm waves. Outside, the world continued with all its noise, but inside the room, everything felt still. For the first time in a long while, they closed their eyes without forcing themselves to relax. Their breathing naturally slowed, and a small smile appeared without being planned. They didn't think about anything in particular. They didn't try to fix any problem or worry about the next day. They simply sat there, letting the music hold them. It was strange how something so simple could create such peace, but they were grateful for it. They remembered the days when their mind used to race nonstop, when silence felt uncomfortable, and when stress felt like a constant companion. Now, there was space to breathe. The more they listened to classical music, the more they discovered how different each piece felt. Some tunes carried a soft sadness that felt comforting, like a warm rain. Some carried hope, lifting the spirit quietly. Some felt like gentle walks through nature, and others felt like calm conversations with someone who understood. Music had no words, but it spoke in a way that made sense without explanation. The person began to shape their mornings differently as well. Instead of waking up already tense, they started their day by playing something soft. Just a few minutes changed the entire start of the day. It helped them step into their day with a light heart instead of a heavy one. They found themselves becoming more patient, more thoughtful, more connected to their own feelings. At work, when stressful moments came in, they always came. They would take short breaks. They would sit quietly, put on a calming tune, and allow themselves a moment to breathe. Even a minute or two made a difference. Before, stress controlled them. Now, they found ways to guide their emotions instead of being dragged by them, slowly. People around them started noticing the change. Someone would say, "You seem calmer these days," or "You look more relaxed lately." The person wasn't trying to impress anyone. The changes were simply natural outcomes of finding something that genuinely helped them. It felt good, not because others noticed, but because they finally felt in control of their inner world. One afternoon, while sitting in a small park, they played a soft violin piece. The warm sun touched their face, and the sound blended with the gentle wind. They felt present, something they had struggled with before. Their mind wasn't running into the past or chasing the future. They were there, in that moment, simply existing without pressure. They realized that classical music didn't just calm them, taught them things. It taught them that peace doesn't have to be loud or forced. It taught them that stillness can hold beauty. It taught them that being alone with their thoughts wasn't something to fear. It also taught them that sometimes the simplest habits can change the way life feels. The person began sharing music with others in small ways. When someone mentioned they were stressed, the person didn't give long advice or complicated explanations. They simply said, "Try listening to something calm, maybe some classical pieces. It might help." They didn't push anyone to do it, but they hoped others might experience the same quiet comfort they had found. One night, they lay down on their bed with the lights turned off. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the street outside. They played a familiar piano track, the same one they had listened to many nights before. But this time, while listening, they reflected on how far they had come. They remembered the restless nights at the beginning, the overwhelming pressure from daily life, and the constant feeling of being mentally drained. Now, they felt steadier. They felt lighter. They felt stronger inside. It wasn't that life had stopped being busy or stressful. It was that they had found a way to stay balanced within it. The music had become a quiet anchor, something they could hold on to whenever the world felt too heavy. The person knew this wasn't a temporary phase. It had become part of who they were. Now, someone who valued calmness. Someone who understood the importance of mental peace. Someone who respected their own emotional well-being. As the music played, they let their eyes close again. The slow melody wrapped around them like a warm blanket. They took a deep breath, feeling both grounded and free. There was no rush, no noise, no pressure. Just soft sound and a peaceful heart. They didn't need anything else in that moment. They didn't need answers or solutions. They didn't need any big achievement or dramatic change. All they needed was the simple truth that they had found something that brought genuine comfort into their life. The story of their journey wasn't about running away from stress or pretending problems didn't exist. It was about learning how to calm the mind, one gentle sound at a time. It was about understanding that inner peace doesn't come from the outside world, it grows inside. Slowly and quietly, as the final note of the song faded. They whispered a small thank you to themselves for giving music a chance that first night. It had opened a door they didn't know they needed. And now, it had become a part of their life in a way that felt natural and meaningful. They lay there, peaceful and content, knowing that whenever life became too loud again, they had a soft place to return to. A place built not of walls or objects, but of calming sounds and steady breaths. And in that gentle space, they finally found something they had been searching for all along, an inner calm that stayed with them, even after the music stopped.